You can drive from the northern shore of Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. The road is called the Pan-American Highway. It runs for 30,000 kilometers, the longest motorable road on Earth. It crosses 14 countries, 9 capital cities, glaciers, deserts, jungles, and the equator. It has been continuously paved since 1963, except for 60 miles. Between the town of Yavisa, Panama, and the town of Turbo, Colombia, the road stops. There is no bridge. There is no ferry. There is no detour. For 106 kilometers in a straight line and roughly 160 kilometers along any walkable path, the highway simply ends. A wall of rainforest begins. The jungle is so dense, so steep, and so saturated that in 60 years of attempts, no road has ever been built across it. Not by Panama, not by Colombia, not by the United States, which paid for engineering surveys in the 1970s and quietly walked away. The break is called the Darien Gap. It is the only place on Earth where 2 continents meet, and you cannot drive between them. In 2023, an estimated 520,000 people walked through it on foot. Men, women, children, from Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, Ecuador, China, Afghanistan, Cameroon. They paid smugglers between $400 and $1,500 US each. They walked for between 5 and 10 days. They carried what they could. The International Organization for Migration recorded 141 bodies recovered from the route in 2024. Independent estimates place the true death toll several times higher. The terrain swallows what falls into it. Many of the missing are never named. This is the story of the 60 miles that broke the longest road on Earth, and the 500,000 human beings who every year walk through them anyway. The Darien Gap straddles the border between Panama and Colombia at the narrowest point of the American continents. To its north lies the province of Darien, Panama. To its south, the department of Chocó, Colombia. To the east is the Caribbean Sea. To the west, the Pacific Ocean. The gap is, at its widest, about 160 kilometers across. At its narrowest, around 100. The terrain is a single, contiguous mass of tropical rainforest. It rises from sea-level mangrove swamps on both coasts to a central spine of mountains, the Serranía del Darien, which reaches heights of around 1,800 meters. The forest is rated as one of the most biodiverse on the planet. It contains over 500 species of birds, more than 200 species of mammals, and an unknown number of insects. Jaguars, ocelots, tapirs, harpy eagles, and bushmasters all live there. Annual rainfall exceeds 3,000 millimeters across most of the region. In the wettest months, it exceeds 500 millimeters per month. The forest sits on a foundation of weathered volcanic rock and clay. The rivers, the Tuira, the Chuquenaque, the Atrato, flood and recede on schedules of their own. Some of them, when they rise, swallow entire villages. The Atrato Basin alone discharges 4,900 cubic meters per second into the Caribbean, one of the wettest river systems on Earth by area. 2 indigenous peoples live in the Darien, the Embera and the Wanan. Together, they number around 30,000. They have lived in the region for at least 3,000 years. They speak Chibchan family languages, build houses on stilts of palm wood, and travel by dugout canoe, piragua, along the rivers that the road has never reached. The Pan-American Highway as a continental project was conceived in 1923 at the 5th International Conference of American States in Santiago, Chile. The idea was a single road from Alaska to Patagonia, a physical embodiment of hemispheric unity. By 1937, 14 American republics had signed the Convention on the Pan-American Highway. Construction began on multiple segments simultaneously. By 1963, the highway was effectively complete from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska to the town of Yavisa in eastern Panama, a distance of around 11,500 kilometers. From Turbo, Colombia southward, it ran continuously to Ushuaia, Argentina, another 17,000 kilometers. Only the gap between them remained. The first serious survey of a road through the Darien was conducted by the United States in 1971. The U.S. Department of Transportation funded a $100 million joint project with Panama and Colombia. Engineers identified two viable routes. Construction crews began clearing forest on the Panamanian side in 1973. The project was abandoned in 1974. Three factors stopped it. The first was money. The estimated cost of completing the road through the gap had risen from $130 million to over $300 million in real terms, at a time when neither Panama nor Colombia could fund their share, and the United States Congress had begun to view foreign infrastructure spending with skepticism. The second was disease. Colombian cattle ranchers and Panamanian agricultural officials had, since the 1950s, identified the Darien jungle as a quarantine barrier, a natural moat that prevented foot and mid-50s, endemic in South American livestock at the time, from spreading north into Central America and ultimately the United States. The U.S. Department of Agriculture lobbied to keep the gap closed. The cattle industry in the southern United States supported them. The third was ecology. By 1975, the early environmental movement had identified the Darien as one of the most pristine large rainforest ecosystems left in the Western Hemisphere. UNESCO designated the Darien National Park, on the Panamanian side, as a World Heritage Site in 1981. Colombia followed with the Los Catillos National Park in 1994, also a UNESCO site. Roughly 5,800 square kilometers of the gap are today formally protected. The road never resumed. As of 2026, the gap between Yavisa and Turbo remains as it was in 1963, a continuous, unbroken rainforest with no paved road, no rail line, no power grid, and no bridge. Yavisa, Panama, is the end of the road from the north. It is a town of around 4,000 people, built on the banks of the Chuquenake River. The pavement of the Pan American Highway runs into the town's main square and stops. There is a low concrete post marking the end. Beyond it, a dirt track continues for perhaps 200 meters and dies in mud. From there, movement is by river or on foot. Until the late 2000s, the Darien was not a primary migration route. Smugglers existed. Small numbers of Colombian and Cuban migrants crossed each year. The principal route from South America to the United States ran by sea. Boats from Colombian and Ecuadorian ports to Mexico or Central America, and overland from there. That changed after 2015. Mexico, under U.S. pressure, tightened visa requirements for travelers from Caribbean and African countries. Maritime smuggling routes became more dangerous and more expensive. The Darien, terrible, slow, free of border guards, became, by elimination, the cheapest remaining path. In 2015, around 30,000 people crossed the gap. In 2021, around 130,000. In 2022, around 250,000. In 2023, the figure reached 520,000, more than the total number who had crossed in the previous 15 years combined. The composition of the migration shifted. In 2010, the migrants were overwhelmingly Cuban and Haitian. By 2023, the largest single nationality was Venezuelan, followed by Ecuadorian, Haitian, Chinese, Colombian, and Afghan. Migrants from 80 different countries crossed in 2023. The route most of them follow begins in the Colombian town of Necoclí on the Caribbean coast. Migrants take a boat across the Gulf of Urabá to the village of Capargana or Acandi. From there, the walking begins. The crossing is roughly 100 kilometers in a straight line and takes between 5 and 10 days. Some accounts describe stretches called the Hill of Death and the Mountain of the Dead. These names are not folklore. They are the verbal landmarks the smugglers use. A migrant carries, on average, 6 to 10 kilograms of gear, plastic sheeting, water purification tablets, a small amount of food, rice, sardines, oats, cash hidden in clothing seams. Children too small to walk are carried on the backs of parents or older siblings. The forest floor is, for much of the route, knee-deep in mud. The rivers must be forded, sometimes more than 30 times in a single day. The most documented dangers are 3. The first is the terrain itself: cliffs, river crossings, falls, broken bones. The second is exposure, hypothermia at altitude, heat exhaustion in the lowlands, dehydration, infection. The third is human. The route is controlled, on the Colombian side, by an armed organization called the Gulf Clan, a successor to the AUC paramilitary groups, and Colombia's largest active drug trafficking organization, with an estimated 9,000 members. The Gulf Clan charges every migrant a fee, typically between $200 and $400 to enter the trails. Migrants who attempt the route without paying are turned back, or, in documented cases, killed. The clan operates checkpoints, runs camps that sell food and water at extreme markup, and provides guides for those who can pay more. Beyond the Gulf Clan's controlled zone, in the deeper forest, smaller bands of armed men operate independently. Robberies are routine. Sexual violence is widespread. Doctors Without Borders, which operated medical clinics on the Panamanian side of the Gap from 2021 to 2024, reported treating hundreds of survivors of sexual assault each year, predominantly women, but also men and children. The figures, the organization has stated, are believed to represent a small fraction of the actual cases. On the Panamanian side, migrants emerge from the forest into two reception villages, Bajo Chiquito and Canan Membrillo. Bajo Chiquito is an indigenous Embera community of around 400 permanent residents. In peak migration months, it processes 1,500 to 2,000 arrivals per day. The Panamanian government, working with UN agencies, moves migrants by dugout canoe down the Tuwira River to formal reception stations at Lajas Blancas and San Vicente. From there, buses take them north to the Costa Rica border. The journey across Panama takes another 2 to 4 days. The total death toll of the route is unknown and probably unknowable. The IOM's Missing Migrants Project recorded 141 confirmed deaths in the Darien in 2024. Confirmed deaths require a body. The forest swallows what falls into it. Rivers carry remains to the sea. Many of the missing are reported by relatives who reach the United States and never hear from a husband, a wife, or a child again. Panamanian authorities and humanitarian groups consistently estimate the real annual death toll in the hundreds, possibly the low thousands. There is no central registry. In 2024, the Panamanian government, under a newly elected administration, began an enforcement campaign called Operación Cerrar la Frontera, Operation Close the Border. Razor wire was installed at several of the most used forest exits. Deportation flights to Colombia, Ecuador, and India were launched. The official crossing figures fell. In 2024, the recorded transit was around 300,000, down from 520,000 the previous year. In the first half of 2025, the figures dropped further still, by some Panamanian counts to under 50,000. Whether the migration has decreased or simply moved is the question observers in the region cannot yet answer. Maritime routes from Colombia to Nicaragua have been reported expanding. Air smuggling routes from South America to Mexico are believed to have resumed. The forest itself is quieter, by all accounts, than it has been since 2020. But the conditions that drove the migration, Venezuela's economic collapse, Haitian political failure, Ecuadorian narco-violence, remain. The forest is not empty. The Darien contains some of the most ecologically significant terrain in the Americas. The Darien National Park, established in 1980, covers 5,790 square kilometers, one of the largest protected areas in Central America. Together with the adjoining Los Catios National Park on the Colombian side, 720 square kilometers, the protected ecosystem is one of only 2 places where Central and South American flora and fauna meet without a road between them. The harpy eagle, one of the largest birds of prey on Earth, with a wingspan exceeding 2 meters, nests in the Darien's giant quipo trees. Its population in the wild is estimated at fewer than 50,000 individuals globally. The jaguar, the apex predator of the Americas, maintains one of its last large continuous habitats here. The pre-Columbian Cueva del Espiritu Santo cave system, on the Colombian side, contains rock art dating back at least 1,500 years. The indigenous Embera and Wonan continue to live in villages of stilted houses along the rivers. Their economy is subsistence, plantain, yucca, fish, hunted bushmeat. Their relationship to the migration crisis is complicated. The arrival of 500,000 strangers in a single year has overwhelmed water sources, polluted rivers, and created public health crises in communities of a few hundred people. Some Embera villages have grown wealthier from carrying migrants in their canoes for fees. Others have demanded the government stop the flow entirely. The forest's oldest inhabitants are now also its border guards. The proposal to bridge the gap, finally, with a road, has resurfaced periodically since 1974. In the 1990s, a Colombian plan to extend the highway through Los Catios was rejected on environmental grounds. In the 2010s, a Chinese-led proposal to build a port-to-port railway across the gap was floated and never formally adopted. In 2024, a Panamanian opposition politician revived the idea of finishing the highway as a security measure, on the logic that a road with checkpoints could be controlled, whereas a jungle cannot. The proposal did not advance. The reasons remain what they were in 1974: money, disease, ecology. To these has been added a fourth. The road, if built, would not stop the migration, it would accelerate it. The Pan-American Highway, in its 30,000 kilometers, crosses Death Valley, the Atacama Desert, the Andes at 4,700 meters of altitude, and the equator. It crosses 14 international borders. It crosses the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. It crosses time zones, currencies, and languages. It does not cross the Darien Gap. In the town of Yavitsa, at the end of the road on the northern side, there is a low white concrete monument. On it, in raised letters, Fin de la Carretera, end of the highway, Pan American Highway. Behind the monument, the dirt track begins. It runs perhaps 200 meters into the trees and disappears. The pavement, on a normal day, ends at noise. Trucks idle, vendors call, engines run. Then the pavement stops, and within 50 paces, the noise stops with it. The forest is louder than the road, but it is louder in a different register. Cicadas, howler monkeys at distance, the Chucunaque River moving brown and steady toward the Pacific. A person can stand at the end of the road and listen, and not hear another road for 160 kilometers. Somewhere in those 160 kilometers, on any given day in 2026, an estimated 500 to 1,500 human beings are walking. They are between Venezuela and the United States, between the failure they left and the country they have not yet reached, between the southern end of the longest road on Earth and the northern end of it. Most of them, by the IOM's count, will make it through. Some will not. The ones who do will resume the highway, somewhere in Panama, and travel north. The ones who do not will become part of the ground, part of the forest that defeated the engineers, the cattle barons, the Pan American Treaty, the empires. The road ends here. The continent does not.